What's up everyone, welcome back to Lace Up Channel. My name is Mickey. In today's video, I'm going to answer all of your questions about warehouse management system if you're a frozen food distributor. So let's get right into it. When talking to frozen food distributors that want to implement a WMS, the first question that they ask is, what devices do I need? There are two devices that work in a frozen environment. One is a Honeywell scanner and the other one is a Zebra scanner. Now I've had my customers purchase both over the time because on occasion, some of the devices have supply chain issues and maybe one manufacturer doesn't have availability when the other one does. But the device out of those two that my customers have the most success with is the Zebra device. I haven't had a single problem with connectivity with the frozen environment with the Zebra frozen device. Now at this juncture, you're like, okay, I've used these frozen devices, Mickey, but I've also used voice pick. Now, for those of you more savvy, more sophisticated frozen food distributors, you've probably had voice pick implemented in your warehouses before. And voice pick is very interesting because it comes at a high cost, but it increases productivity 30 to 40%. Now, if you're gonna do voice picking, traditionally you're gonna have a headset that's freezer grade and it's tied to either through Bluetooth or through a cord to a device somewhere on the picker's person. Now, these devices operate very easily in minus 20, minus 22 degree temperatures, and they keep the picker's hands free so that they can optimize their picking speeds. The second question that I get is, how do I label my pallets? In a frozen food environment, it's very simple. You receive your pallets on your dock, and at some point you've got to break down those pallets and palletize. Now, I don't know how you receive. I don't know if you're an ice cream distributor and you receive by pallet, and within each pallet you have a layer of different flavors or different items. But in short, every single time you receive something, you have to print labels. Now, a WMS like mine provides those labels. It's a little QR code that contains the properties of that item or of that layer within a pallet. So you're gonna slap that label on the layer. So if you've got 4 layers of ice cream, a vanilla, a chocolate, a strawberry, a pistachio flavored, you're gonna have 4 labels on that pallet. Now, when you go to check that pallet in, it's quite simple. You simply scan that label for all 4 items, and then you take that pallet to the bin where it belongs. Remember, every single time you palletize, 1 label per item on that pallet. The third question I ask is during the actual put away process. How do I know what bin to put the pallet in? Now, a lot of frozen food distributors get lost once they get into the warehouse and put pallets wherever the hell they want. And the problem with doing this is that then you can't find the pallet when either you need to pick or replenish, and you end up spending more time looking for the pallet than you do if you just had a system that told you where to put the pallet in the first place. So where do you put the pallet? Well, putting the pallet somewhere is quite simple. You're gonna look for pallet positions in or around the picking slot for that item. Now, our system does this automatically. It knows where the item is being picked that's on the pallet that you're putting away, and it recommends that you put that pallet somewhere in the overstock bins in that proximity. Now, once you arrive in that overstock bin, you basically scan the bin and our system will register that inventory, what's on that pallet in that bin. The next question that I receive is, how do I keep picking simple? As you guys know, in a frozen environment, people have gloves, people have big jackets, people don't have the normal control that they have outside of that frozen environment. So when handling one of these devices, assuming that you're picking with a scanner, we've made scanning just like voice picking. When you scan, let's say you arrive at a bin location and you have to pull an item that's situated within that bin. It's quite simple. You're either going to scan the bin or you're going to scan the item. Now that seems completely rudimentary, but what happens if you have 2 picking bins containing the same item? Well, at that juncture, you're going to scan the picking bin that you're at, and the system will know that the item's within the picking bin. What happens if you have more than 1 item within the picking bin? Well, that's quite simple as well. The system will have you scan the bin and then scan at least 1 case of the item to confirm the line. Then there's another scenario. What happens instead of me scanning the bin itself, I scan the item? Well, if you have that item in multiple picking bins, the system will immediately prompt you to scan the bin itself. So either way, whether you scan the bin or the item, you're going to be able to confirm the line once the system is 100% sure that you're at the right location and in front of the right product. How do I load my truck out? Everyone asks me this. How do I put my product from my dock onto the truck? Well, once you have this little guy, it's quite simple. At the end of picking every single pallet, you're going to print a pallet tag. You're going to put it on the pallet itself. And before you load on the truck, you're going to scan that pallet tag, and then you're going to scan a QR code that's representative of that route. That will ensure that your pallet goes onto the truck, onto the correct truck. Because many of you, if you're in frozen food distribution, you're always cognizant of a pallet going on the wrong truck and then having to then bring that pallet back to put it on the right truck, delaying the delivery for the customer, losing sales, etc. So scanning pallets onto the truck is simple. One last time. Scan the pallet and then scan the QR code for the truck or route, and that's how you load out onto a truck. Every single food distributor has returns. Once you've loaded onto the truck, your driver goes out to make the drop. But once they get to the customer, at times there are situations where product gets refused, where the order gets canceled, where some product gets damaged, and inevitably you've got inventory left on the truck that's got to be returned back to the warehouse. Well, what happens with that inventory? It's quite simple. Within our application, we have a route return section, and in this route return section, you can select a load that went out on the truck this morning. It'll show you the products that could be left over, and then you simply take those products and you can return them at the end of the route to either a return bin or a damaged bin. Now, if you put them in the damaged bin, they're going to reside there until you do your next cycle count, at which point you'll adjust those out. And if you put them in the return bin, inevitably you're going to take those products out of the return bin and put them back into their picking bin. So quite simple, route returns will unload anything left on your truck at the end of the day. The last activity that people ask about in the warehouse is, how do I handle cycle counts? Well, cycle counts for most of you frozen food distributors are a physical inventory every single month. But in my experience, a cycle count is a toned down, much smaller sample of counts within a warehouse, and inevitably, as you do all those cycle counts, you end up counting the entire warehouse as a result. So let me give you an example. Let's say you've got 100 pallet positions in your warehouse. Well, a cycle count would be counting a subset of that 100, maybe counting 1 bin or 2 bins or 3 bins. Now, cycle counts should be done in sequence, going up and down the rows, counting however many bins you need in a day to fulfill your count in whatever date increment you want. So let's say again, you've got 100 bins and you've got to count 3.33 bins a day to get to 100 bins per month. So your guys are going to start at the beginning of the warehouse. They're going to scan the bin and start counting the product that should be within that bin. It's really straightforward. The only other way to count is to do a physical, but if you do a physical, you've literally got to count every bin in the warehouse in order to adjust the inventory. So cycle counts, scan the bin, input the quantities of what you see within the bin, hit save, discrepancies are applied, and inevitably you finish the warehouse and your inventory is 100% accurate. Now that all the actions are done, the last point that I have for you is, how do these transactions end up in your ERP system? So most of you, you've either got Integrisys or NetSuite or Dynamics or SAP, and you want to know, how do you integrate? Well, the way that we do it is everything executed within the warehouse is exported to the ERP system through a middleware integration, and we push through that integration any adjustments, any cuts, anything that changed from the time it was executed in the warehouse to the time it was posted to your ERP. So overall, exporting should be as seamless as possible. It should happen automatically at the end of every day, or in the morning, or multiple times throughout the day. And the information should, in short, teleport from the warehouse to our back office through the middleware into your ERP. So pretty much that addresses every single question a frozen food distributor asks me when they're looking, to inquire about my product, to purchase it perhaps. And I believe that these questions are going to help you really make a decision as to whether or not one of these WMSs is right for you. So do me a favor, go down below, let me know if you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you learned anything from it. If not, hey, thanks for watching till the end anyways. Love you guys. Take care.